It'll be fine. Yes. Hey, well, welcome to Lessons in Leadership. I'm Dana Williams, and I'm excited to be here with Micah today. Our third wheel here is not here, which is H. He had to go run, he had an unexpected appointment come up.
He
So
doesn't have a computer.
his
That's a problem.
computer and he can't get
Yeah.
on. So he's with some of our technical friends. Anyway, you've got Mike and I today, and we thought it would be really fun to recap what we've been talking about the last 6 weeks with lessons in leadership. Before we do that, I'd like to take a brief moment for those of you who don't know us and introduce ourselves. My name's Dana Williams, and I am a Gallup Clifton certified strengths coach. I also do consulting, and I love working with leaders. I work with a lot of leaders who are passionate about being a difference maker and they want to make a difference. And so I help them unlock their talents and use those every day as well as their team's talents. So I'm excited to be here. I came off corporate about a year and a half ago, and so did Micah. We both kind of share that in common.
Yeah.
Have went on our own and have been hosting some great opportunities to talk with other coaches over the last year and a half. So I'm excited to be here with Micah today, and I'll kick it off to you, Micah, and you can introduce yourself.
All right. Sounds good. My name is Micah Lawrence. I'm an ICF certified coach and a Gallup certified strengths coach. I work a lot with startup founders and small business owners and their leadership teams to do leadership development and team development workshops, which are just my favorite, Dana. That's over the last 2 months, I've gotten a lot more of the team development workshops, and I'll tell my wife every day. It's like these are where the energy is. This is where people really get to see how the rubber meets the road in Clifton Strengths Development. I'll put a little plug in here too that I've been working on an MVP or a prototype of a really simple hiring tool where I'm trying to make it easier for people who are in a hiring position to look past just the things that you'll see on a resume beyond skills and experience and identify whether there's a good culture fit between a hiring candidate and the hiring manager. So if anybody listening just happens to be hiring right now, I'm actually looking for people to help me test it. And I've got a couple of companies that are helping me test this survey, really is all that it is, to see how we could improve culture fit between the candidate and the job. So if anybody's interested in that, send me a message on LinkedIn. I'd love to include you. I'm not charging anything for it right now. We're just testing it and seeing how it works.
I love that you brought that up, Micah, because I think as entrepreneurs, that's what we're doing right now. We're testing and learning, testing and
That's
learning.
right. Yeah.
And I think I kind of did that in the corporate world and marketing at Southwest Airlines, but we had a little bit more power behind us. When it's just you, it's like, okay, buddies, come help.
Yeah, anybody that's willing.
So yeah. So one of the things that we want to mention today is feel free to use the chat and share with us what your questions are and what you're feeling as we go through lessons in leadership. We have been talking about the 4 P's of your leadership brand, and H has created this kind of framework over 10 years ago, and he's been using it for 10 years. I use variations of it with my teams when I work on personal branding. I know Mike has probably got some variations he uses, but we all have something in common, and that's that we want people to find their uniqueness and talk about that and use that in all that they do. I think we're in the age now, and I want to see what you think about this, Micah, but I think we're in the age of personal branding because everything else is a commodity. And it doesn't matter if you're in a big corporation or you're a founder of your own organization, or you're an entrepreneur, or you're independent coach. You need to kind of know what your leadership brand is. And
Absolutely.
so
I've even seen this. Oh, sorry. I was just
go ahead. I think it's important to talk about why it's important, right?
Yeah.
Why this is powerful.
And that it's different than it used to be. And that's something that can be hard for people to adjust to sometimes if the world is changing and I'm not. And I've noticed that a lot of people on LinkedIn, where they used to kind of adopt their company's brand, a lot more companies are being okay with the idea that you adopt your own brand, that you can have your own personal brand, your own leadership brand. It doesn't have to reflect exactly your company. And I've seen it on LinkedIn. I've seen it on TikTok, where people blow up on TikTok and they have their own thing, but they still work for this
Yeah.
company that supports them, being who they are and, doing what they know. And it's just it's a different take on personal branding that I don't think we've really seen before.
No, and I think when I was in the corporate world, I thought, "Oh, I can't talk about my other thing I
That
do."
Me too. That's what
Right?
I'm
I
talking
can't
about.
talk
It's
about that
different.
now. And now it's it's just part of it. And in fact, this afternoon I have a live coaching group it's usually every Tuesday. We're doing it today, but we are talking about how to create your biography, how to create a bio.
Oh,
And
that's
it's
cool.
these same things about messaging. And I thought we'd go through the four P's are your power, your purpose, your POV, and your platform. We haven't gotten into platform. We'll do that next time. But we want to spend today talking about your power, like who are you? What are your unique talents? What is your strengths? And I think one of the things that H said last time that really touched me is I think we're dealing with the comparison syndrome, where a lot of people are out there going, well, I want to be like that person. And they're really not digging deep and finding the gold within themselves to talk about. And I think there's so much power there. And the confidence comes from, and this is what H was saying last week, knowing your strengths. There's the confidence because you're
Yeah.
1 in 33 million. And I heard a great stat that I used last week in a speaking engagement on this. I thought, oh my gosh, we've got to use this. Okay, so here we go. You're 1 in 33 million, right?
Mhm.
So how many people live in Texas, Micah? You just came from.
29 million.
Yeah. So you're going to have to go to another state and go find 4 more million people to find somebody that is as unique as you, Micah.
Yep.
I mean, how cool is that?
Right. I use this in my workshops. I always talk about, like, especially with Texas companies that I
It's
work with.
so
It's like
big.
you are literally the only person in Texas statistically that has your top 5 strengths in that order. What
I
a
love
cool
that
way
you
to
use
think of
that.
that
How
uniqueness. Yeah.
funny. I love
Yeah.
that. Well, it's a great comparison, but it's where your gold is. It's where the confidence comes from. And I think so many people, when they're thinking about who they are and their power, they're looking elsewhere. They're not looking within. So,
Yeah. I love
I
that.
don't know what you're seeing with that as you talk to your founders and you talk to
I, I,
people
I,
that are going through that.
this whole idea of who you are, that's the question that H always leads with when you're talking about your power. You're really getting to the core of who you are. And that's why I love the Clifton Strengths material, because it gets to the heart of who people are faster than any other assessment that I've worked with. And I'm familiar with all of them out there, and I've used them to some extent, but I always come back to the Clifton Strengths because we get this awesome combination of
Mhm.
kind of like accelerating the learning curve about who somebody is, while still giving that flexibility to be unique too, which is, it's kind of
Mhm.
an interesting paradox that a lot of people are hesitant. And I've worked with enough people who are like, I want my spouse to take this assessment now, and
Yeah.
they won't do it. And
Yeah.
and they're resisting, and it's because, I'll always say, well, it's because nobody wants to be put in a box, and we don't want to be stereotyped. We don't want to be unfairly generalized, and yet the Clifton Strengths does a little bit of both. We have some of that generalizing because we're learning about what people with my strengths have in common, but because 1 in 33 million people have different top 5 strengths, it
Mhm.
still leaves us that flexibility and freedom to combine them in different ways, to show how there's a new dynamic when my number 1 and my number 3 and my number 4 strengths come into play, and that's different from other people who have similar strengths as me. That to me is why it's so valuable to get to the core. The other thing that we talked about a couple of weeks ago that I think contributes to who we are so deeply is our values. And I think H uses the word passions, but
Yeah.
I mean, we talk about this all the time. This is in your
Mhm.
journal too,
Yes.
that really understanding and defining and articulating your values is the yin to the yang of strengths. You
Mhm.
need to know them both, and together they're a really powerful tool for self-awareness.
Yeah, and it's a great exercise. If those of you that are on the call, if you are a Clifton Strengths coach or you know your Clifton strengths, we would encourage you to go. You can Google core values and go find all the core values. And I would pick no more than 5 and really circle those. And then we call mitten match with your strengths. And for instance, I have ideation as my number one strength. Well, one of my core values is innovation. I want to be always innovating.
Yeah.
And so those connect. So it's going to give me passion to be innovating something. Yeah. And I see the passion in your eyes when you talk about what you get to do now versus the passion you had 18 months ago when you're coming out of corporate. You are like on fire, Micah.
Thank you. Yeah, I feel that way.
And I see it. I mean, I see it through the Zoom. I see it through the screen. And that's what we want. We want you to find that passion. Yeah. I had somebody that just changed jobs and wrote me this morning and said, nope, wrong job, wrong fit. And I said, get out of there quickly. You don't want to hang on to something that's not going to feed your soul and feed your passions and feed your strengths. Right. Yep. So I think that's a piece of that. The second piece of the 4 P's of leadership is purpose. So let's talk about purpose for a moment, because again, we're so used to corporate environment having a mission and a purpose, but sometimes as leaders or individuals within an organization or founders, we don't think about the fact that we need one ourselves. Yeah. So how's that played out for you, Micah?
So I have some interesting, like combining thoughts about this one. Yeah. I love that H simplified these into the kind of the one question that summarizes each category. And this is the why you lead.
Yes.
And what I would add to this one, it may not be just this one. It may actually be a little bit of this and a little bit of the next P. But Brené Brown has this really great quote that in her book, Dare to Lead, which is really great for leaders. If you haven't read this book, you should read this book. So write that down for any of you leaders listening. And if you have people reporting to you, it's a fantastic book. But this phrase stuck with me and I use it all the time. And it's, who we are is how we lead. And it's such a great, it shows the connectivity across these 4 Ps, that they're not isolated from one another. You're going to show up in your leadership role because of who you are. And what works for you as a leader may not work for other people because of who you are. And what works for other people may not work for you because of who they are and who you are. So I just love that there's some connectivity here between, I am the kind of leader I am. I lead for the reasons that I lead because of my strengths and values. It's not like we're doing these in isolation. It's that we're understanding ourselves so that we can understand how and why we lead. That's a perspective that I've taken with me since reading that book by Brené Brown.
Yeah. And I think when you think about your purpose, it's what is that contribution that you make? So I'll use you as an example, Micah. There's only one Micah that has had all the
Thank goodness. Oh, no, I'm just kidding.
I mean, I think about, you love to sing. You love to give back to the community. You have been, foster parent. I mean, the things that you have done and the IT and the strengths, well, you're not going to find somebody else. And so I think that is what we're asking is to look inside the circle, look inside yourself and think about, are you an expert in what you know? Yes, you probably are, because there's only one you, right?
Well, even as a leader in the corporate world, my why and how I showed up at work, because I've been doing Clifton Strengths for like 8 years, but I've only owned my own business for 18 months. There's a gap there. Like, what was happening during that time? And it was that's how I led. I was a different leader than anybody else I was aware of at my last company. It wasn't a Southwest where everybody was using the Clifton Strengths. I was one of the few, and I was one of very few who had an expertise in the Clifton Strengths. So I had other teams that were inviting me to come do workshops with their teams within the same company. It was totally on the side. This was not my day job, but it was one of my favorite things when I would get an email and people would be like, hey, I heard you do this. Could you come do a 2-hour workshop? I'm like, absolutely. So it was like, that was a part of how I showed up as a leader, but I knew that was unique to me. It was important to me. I made space and time for it so that I could be the kind of leader that was unique. It was how I wanted to show up as a leader, even within my company.
Yeah. And I think in finding that purpose, sometimes people, it took me a while to figure out what my purpose was. And I had a similar situation where we were just starting it. People would call and I had a day job, but I was like, yeah, I want to do that. And I was thinking, now, why
Yeah.
don't other people want to do this? Well, they weren't as passionate about it as I was. And it got, when I go to the deeper calling, it was, I wanted, my purpose is to help people birth their purpose
Mhm.
and use it every day, not just, oh, here's, what I'm going to work on next year. It's like every day, how are you living out your purpose? And I found when I was living my purpose, when things were tough, it was okay because I had a higher calling.
Yeah.
And in that corporate world, when things are tough, I had to go to the outside world to kind of find that calling, to feed that calling, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah, how's that? And I think that's the thing with purpose is it kind of has this misnomer of, oh, that's too big for me. No, we're all here for a calling. We're all here on earth to do something. Let's
Where
make
is
sure.
your belief?
It's number 7.
Oh, okay. It is
Yeah.
in your top 10.
Yeah.
I it's interesting. Something that I've learned in the last few months is that I agree with you, and I believe that everybody will find more fulfillment if they can articulate their purpose, if they can write that down and understand what truly connects with them. I have noticed I've worked with some leaders in the last few months who have low belief, and that's not as important to them. And we can still get them to
Mhm.
do it, and they'll still articulate values, which is nice. It goes
Mhm.
to show that everybody can benefit from talking about your purpose, but their purpose is not, it's not the same. It's not as, I don't know. I'm trying not to come across as being judgmental because
No, no, no.
I don't care. I mean, I don't
Yeah.
care what your purpose is. I
Yeah.
just want to help you find it. And people with low leaders with low belief have been a fascinating study for me because it's not the same things that I hear from the people who have high belief. And that's
Yeah.
okay. That's, if that's what drives them and that's what their purpose is, it's still meaningful.
Yes. And I think when we talk about your leadership brand, if your purpose is to help others be themselves every day or grow or whatever the purpose is, you want to be living that every day. And I
Yeah.
think if we're not, it's hard. And it's just like people that I have futuristic too. And I've learned that people
Yeah.
that don't have futuristic have a really hard time with goal setting. It's like,
True. Yeah.
I can't think about where I'm going to be in 3 years. I don't even know what I'm doing tomorrow. I'm
Hmm.
like, okay, well, let's back it up. What do you
Especially
want to
high
do in
adaptability. They're just like,
30
well,
days?
just focused on now.
Yeah. Yeah. And you've gone through a lot. You've gone through a lot, but yet you're achieving things that you want to achieve. You've done
Yeah.
so much since I've met you and changing your
Oh,
life.
thank you.
It's all for
Yeah,
good. I mean,
we've been busy.
you
That's for sure.
see that. I mean, you've moved, you've, gone on your own. You're now, did I see you're launching a book?
Yeah,
What?
children's book. It's
Yeah,
our it's our second children. I have to have 5 projects going at any given
sure you
time.
do.
I can't help it.
Along
And
with a
that's
family of 5 to manage.
right, exactly. So
And your
that's
own
just,
business.
that was
Yeah,
just for fun. We're
yeah,
not going to get rich off of that children's book, but I do it because it's
sure.
a creative outlet and it's a part of who I am. Yeah,
Absolutely, and it gives you energy, and that's what we're
it
saying
does.
here, is give yourself permission to do those things and try those things. I think we talked about test and
Exactly.
learn at the beginning of our call today and how important it is. If you look at everything as test and learn, then you're okay to walk through the fear because you're gonna grow. It's okay to
Yeah.
get through that. So,
Can I ask a question about pitch now?
yes,
Like,
we're going into
is
pitch.
that like segue into pitch?
That's segue.
I was thinking about your LinkedIn profile when I saw
Yeah,
it earlier today, and I haven't, or yesterday, I don't remember when I was looking at it. But you start with, I help leaders, and that I don't remember the rest of it. But it made me
yeah,
wonder, if is that your purpose? Do we need to
yeah.
find, can I go, should I go find that, or do you have it memorized?
No, I've got it here. It's just I help leaders transform their lives and their companies from the inside out.
Yeah.
So I start with usually a brand script, which comes from Donald Miller from Story
Uh-huh.
Brand. So I started with the brand script and then I narrowed it down to, okay, this is for my one liner. This is what I can use for
Okay.
social. And then
Yeah.
this is what I can use for my bio. So you'll see it in different ways.
Yeah.
And in fact, today in my coaching class, we're going to go through different bios and how they use us. And believe me, Micah, I've changed it and tweaked it and
Oh,
changed
sure.
it and tweaked. And that's what we want to say is, you keep kind of finding it, but it's like one of the exercises I have people do is go out and send a note to friends, family members, colleagues, coworkers, get them to give you one word that
Hmm.
describes you. And you'll
I love
start
that.
seeing a pattern of the same words over and over or similar words. And the word I kept getting from people that I worked with was, impact, transform,
Cool.
inspire. So I try to use some of those words in my
Uh-huh.
statement, in my pitch. But yeah, it took me a while to do that. And it's something I want people to feel comfortable that you don't feel like you have to figure it out yourself. And I actually got someone to come alongside beside me and look at everything I had and say, okay,
Uh-huh.
shoot holes in this. Tell me
Nice.
what I
That's a
should
good
be
idea.
saying. And that's why I said maybe that would be fun today if anybody wants to share theirs. But yeah, so
Yeah, that's hearing you talk about that is going back to my comment before about how there's continuity across these. Don't think about these as living in a vacuum. Your power helps you understand your purpose, and both of those should influence your pitch. That's all. There's all continuity there. If your messaging resonates or reflects your purpose and your power, then I think people will feel the authenticity of that, and you're more likely to attract the people that you want to work with. And I just think that's a really cool, your profile even is just a really great example of that.
well, thank you. So, and I think too, you got to know your audience, whether for
Oh
us
yeah.
as entrepreneurs, like you came out of those shoots saying, I help founders. I focus on founders,
Mhm.
and that helps you stay really focused and narrow in how you help them, right?
Yeah.
Whether it's, oh, they need a recruiting tool. Oh, here's you're constantly coming up with new products for them, right?
Yeah, with that in mind though, it's I've thought about this a lot, just in the last month, that I got so used to saying that I do leadership coaching with startup founders and small business owners and team development workshops with their teams. And I've been rethinking that many times as my pitch. That doesn't really communicate the value that people are receiving. So even still, I'm like, well, that's what I do, but they don't care. That's the
Mhm.
medium. They don't care
Right.
that that's what I do. They want to know, how do you help people? How do you
Yeah.
help me? And that's been something that I've been kind of revisiting my pitch and trying new things to see what's the right way to put this in a way that resonates with people, the real value that I bring, not just the things that I do.
I'm glad you brought that up because we talked a little bit about this last time, but I think this is a great lesson. It was really helpful for me when I studied StoryBrand and became a guide there and learned
Hmm.
about starting always with the problem. So the problem I solve is leaders want to be difference makers. They just don't know how to be difference makers
Yeah.
in their roles. And so part of that is under helping them understand what they're made of, unearthing, birthing their purpose, birthing their strengths, their core values, and then letting that come out. So
Yeah.
they just don't make it. They don't feel, the problem is they don't feel like they're making an impact. Well, they're not making an impact because they don't know what they're made of. Right.
Yeah.
So I focus on people that are difference makers. That's the problem. They want to be difference makers. They just aren't making impact. And
And
then,
that,
does that
oh,
make sense?
sorry. No, it totally makes sense. That's very much what I've been thinking through is, what are the problems I keep hearing from startup founders? The things that
Yeah.
I didn't word it that way, but that's
Yeah.
exactly it. Like, what do I keep hearing from multiple founders? And when I have an opportunity to chat with a founder for the first time, I'll often bring that up. One of the things that they'll say a lot of times, or that I'll say because I've heard it before, is as I'm talking to a founder, I'll listen for where they are in the growth of their company, because the thing I keep hearing from founders is, my role changes.
Yeah.
I'm at the beginning, they're often technical, or they had the original idea, but they have to be a jack of all trades. They have to be the one that has ideas, executes the ideas, and leads the way and does the planning. They basically have to do everything at the beginning, but then they start hitting the stage where their role changes and they get to
Mhm.
hire. And then they start hiring people around them and they still have to wear many hats. Then there's another evolution where they become just a leader. They're not doing any of the execution anymore because they have a big enough team, or they've gotten funding that gives them enough money to go hire a team, that they're just a leader now. And they're like, what do I do? So I'll
Yeah.
often listen for where they are in that
Journey.
evolution, and
Yeah.
I'll point out to them, and I'll mention to them, is like, this is what I can help with is help you identify, like, who do you need to be at this stage of the growth of your company so that you feel comfortable leaning into that person, into that leader or executor or wherever you are, knowing that that will probably change as you grow and scale, but that's okay. That's exactly one of the things that
I
I've
love
learned.
that, because what we talked about last time, and I want to remind people of this, is we are we are the solution to their problem. They're not buying us. They're not,
Yeah.
as entrepreneurs, they're buying the solution you provide. So you provide the solution to help them on the journey to be that leader they need to be in different phases.
Yeah.
And the leader that you are right now is not the leader you were a year ago. You're totally different, right? Same
Yeah.
with, I mean, I'm totally different than I was, and I'm going to be different 6 months from now and 12
Sure.
months from now. But to have somebody on that journey with you, guiding you and being that kind of whisperer, CEO
Yeah.
whisperer, is huge, right? I
It gives you a
mean,
lot of confidence. You know what to expect.
yeah. Yeah. And that's what it's probably, I would think that the problem that a lot of founders have is just loneliness. That they're trying to
True.
run it, do everything, and they're
Yeah.
feeling frustrated. And, so there's a lot,
Oh,
but I
yeah.
love how you talked about, and I think that's important part of this is when you're discovering your pitch, go out there and talk to your audience
Yeah.
and survey them and ask them what they need. I think I mentioned this last week to you and H, but I'm with a group of women founders, and we have a survey we're running right now for women for this
Oh, yeah.
very reason,
Yeah, you
because
did
we're
say that.
developing some content for women business owners, founders. And we're trying to find out what is it right now that's their biggest challenge. We've heard things like confidence and
Yeah.
imposter syndrome and things like that. But what is the common theme that we're hearing? So I'm a big believer in getting that research. And so I like that you brought that up
Yeah,
as you're
absolutely.
gathering.
Well, and to bring this back to, we kind of went down this rabbit hole with entrepreneurship because that's our
Right.
world right now.
Yeah,
But we both come from a corporate background. This still
absolutely.
applies to the corporate world. If you're a leader going into a role where you're new, but the team isn't, or maybe you're hiring your team altogether, you're still you're still going to be at your best if you can figure out what are their
Mhm.
problems. What is it that your employees need? What is it that your supervisor needs? And as you know your audience, you can articulate your pitch a little bit better, knowing this is what you can expect of me if you report to me, or this is what you can expect of me as a leader if I report to
Mhm.
you, and understanding yourself well enough to listen for the problems that you solve for both the people that report to you and the people you report to. You become an asset to the team as a leader because you know who you are, you know what your purpose is, you know what you have to offer, and you're able to articulate it in a pitch that actually resonates with them. So
And
corporate, just making that connection to the corporate
I'm
world
glad you
too.
did, because I think that's huge. And I'm working with corporate right now. I find that not only am I helping the leader figure out their personal brand, but then their team's brand.
Oh yeah.
How do we show up as a team? And so a big piece of that is, once with one team I'm working at, once we determine that, we have that out every time we have a meeting, reminding them this is who we are
Yeah.
and this
I
is
love
what
that.
we stand for. And I think so take it, not only, that's why I like to help transform the leader and their team, to help them think about how they show up as a team, because as we know right now with the war for talent, there is so much shuffling going on,
Oh
and
yeah.
we've got leaders coming in and out. So even if you're transitioning into a new team, your leadership brand is huge. Or if
Absolutely.
you're transitioning out and you're helping transition a new person in, there's just so much transition going on that
Yeah.
that is, again, another reason why leadership brand could not be more important right now. So
I
we've got
agree.
a few minutes to close out on this, and next, in 2 weeks, we'll be talking about platform. But is there anything else as you think about power, purpose, pitch, or anything you guys want to mention in the chat to us that is on your mind right now as you hear us talk about this? And as Micah said, we got it off on the entrepreneurial front, but if there's any other opportunities or things that you all want to talk about right now,
Yeah,
we'd
I'd love
love
to hear
to. Sorry.
what anybody's what are your takeaways as you were listening to this? What was like one major takeaway, something that resonated with you that you're leaving here with? Let's just see, give everybody a second to respond.
I got the barking dog a
Your
toy.
dog snuck in. Was that
He snuck in, and he was supposed to be on his chew toy. It's like,
He wasn't obeying.
that was not good. Sorry. Thank you. I went
Disobeying
on
God.
mute for a minute.
You're
But
fine.
yeah, but we'd love to hear from you. And even if you didn't get to hear with us live, we'd love for you to share your challenges with leadership branding and your personal brand. Cause I think there's challenges, but I think there's a lot of opportunities now. And I think this is why this is we've been spending, oh my gosh, I think it's been over 2 months on this as a team talking about
we dragged this out, didn't we?
We did. We've got one more week going, and that's it. So we'll be back in 2 weeks in October to talk about the last piece of this, which is platform. But we want to thank you guys for joining us and listening to Micah and I riff about our purpose statement.
And we'll have H next time. We'll bring.
We'll have
make sure
H.
that he comes
So
along.
The third will be here, but just follow us on LinkedIn, and please feel free to send us your comments or thoughts. We loved being here with you today. So thank you, Micah.
Yeah, no problem. Y'all have a